when 8-year-old Lily clutched her worn crayon drawing and made a simple offer to help fix the Artemis VII rocket. She was entirely unaware of the cosmic irony unfolding in that sterile, white corridor. She did not know that the magnificent machine standing silent in its gantry, a 300-foot monument to human ambition, was on the brink of catastrophic failure. Not from a grand, explosive malfunction, but from a whisper. A tiny, untraceable harmonic resonance that threatened to shake it to pieces moments after launch. She was just a little girl who loved the stars, presenting her colorful schematic to men with furrowed brows and tired eyes, never knowing that her simple drawing contained the elegant, asymmetrical solution to a multi-billion-dollar problem that had humbled the world's most brilliant aerospace engineers, in a small house where the fence was more rust than paint. Nestled just far enough from the Kennedy Space Center that the rumbling launches were a distant prayer, lived Lily. Her bedroom was not a space of dolls and tea sets but a personal cosmos of paper and wax. The walls were a nebula of tacked-up drawings. Swirling galaxies rendered in purple and blue crayon, comets with shimmering glitter trails, and rockets of every shape and size. Her favorite, the centerpiece, was a meticulously detailed, if disproportionate, drawing of the Artemis VII, a rocket she had watched on the news every single night, a rocket she had lovingly named Stardust. Her mother, a woman whose hands were perpetually chapped from washing dishes at a local diner, would find library books on quantum physics and propulsion theory tucked under Lily's pillow. Their complex diagrams and dense text treated with the same reverence a different child might give a fairy tale. Lily didn't just see rockets, she felt them. She understood their fierce desire to climb, to escape the pull of the earth, and in the quiet hum of her own mind, she heard their secret songs. She was a prodigy wrapped in the unassuming package of a girl in scuffed sneakers and a faded t-shirt. A mind that saw the universe not in numbers, but in patterns, in rhythms, in the beautiful, chaotic dance of existence that adults had long forgotten how to perceive. Her world was one of profound connection to the mechanical giant she could see gleaming from her bedroom window on a clear day. A silent friend preparing for the greatest journey of all. Miles away, in the stark, refrigerated air of the NASA Control Center, no such poetry existed. Here, the universe was a hostile entity to be conquered by data and brutal logic. The Artemis VII, America's triumphant return to lunar exploration, was a prisoner of physics. 1. A ghost in the machine, a malevolent hum known as harmonic resonance, was slowly killing it. 1. It was a tiny, insidious vibration originating in the fuel injectors of the main engine. A vibration so subtle it was nearly undetectable at rest, but which simulations showed would amplify exponentially upon ignition, creating a feedback loop of destructive energy that would tear the engines from their mountings. 1. 2. The launch window, a precise celestial alignment needed to slingshot the craft towards the moon, was closing in less than 72 hours. Panic, cold and sharp, had replaced the usual confident hum of the facility. At the heart of this storm sat Dr. Elias Vance, a man whose brilliance was matched only by his exhaustion. His face, illuminated by the ghostly blue light of a dozen monitors displaying cascading, incomprehensible data streams, was a mask of grim determination. He was haunted by the memory of the Ares 3 mission 8 years prior. A mission that ended in a fiery plume over the Atlantic, due to a miscalculation he still saw in his nightmares. Vance had lost a piece of his soul in that failure, replacing it with a rigid adherence to protocol and a deep-seated skepticism of anything that couldn't be quantified by a supercomputer. He and his team of engineers, the finest minds of a generation, had thrown everything they had at the problem. They had rewritten algorithms, redesigned components in simulations, and argued until their voices were hoarse. Yet the ghost remained. The rocket, a symbol of hope and progress for the entire world, sat on its launch pad like a patient with an incurable disease, its heart beating with a deadly, rhythmic tremor that no one could silence. The juxtaposition of these two worlds was a silent testament to the universe's strange sense of balance. In one, a cavernous, sterile control room buzzed with the frantic energy of desperation, filled with powerful machines and powerless men, all staring at screens that screamed of failure in a language of numbers and graphs. The air was thick with the scent of ozone from the servers and the bitter aroma of burnt coffee. It was a world of straight lines, right angles, and the inflexible tyranny of proven equations. It was a place of immense power and profound limitation. In the other world, a small, sunlit bedroom overflowed with color and imagination. Lily's room, with its crooked drawings and scattered books, smelled of crayons and old paper. It was a world of curves, spirals, and the boundless freedom of a mind that had not yet learned the meaning of the word impossible. Her tools were not supercomputers but simple sticks of wax, her equations not written in code but drawn in the vibrant, intuitive language of a child. It was a place of humble means and infinite possibility. One world was trying to force a solution through sheer computational might, attacking the problem with the rigid hammer of logic. The other was simply listening, allowing a solution to unfold with the gentle, organic wisdom of nature itself. Neither world was aware of the other. Yet their collision was as inevitable as the sunrise, a fateful convergence of despair and hope, of jaded experience and innocent genius. The problem itself was a thing of maddening elegance. It was not a broken part or a flawed line of code that could be easily identified and replaced. It was a problem of synergy, of a perfect, terrible harmony. The engineers had named it the cascade resonance. At precisely 93% of maximum thrust, the vibration frequency of the liquid oxygen flowing through the microscopic fuel injector nozzles would perfectly align with the natural resonant frequency of the engine's bell housing. 1. This phenomenon, much like a singer shattering a glass with a single, sustained note, would cause the vibrations to amplify each other in a catastrophic feedback loop. The engine wouldn't just shake, it would begin to tear itself apart at a molecular level. 3. Dr. Vance's team had tried every conventional solution. They modeled dampers and baffles, attempting to absorb or redirect the vibrational energy. The simulations showed these additions would either be too heavy, compromising the rocket's payload capacity, or they would simply shift the resonant frequency to a different, equally dangerous thrust level. They tried altering the fuel flow, creating chaotic, unpredictable patterns to disrupt the harmony. But this only made the engine unstable and inefficient. They were trapped. Their logic, their training, their entire framework of understanding was built on principles of symmetry, order, and predictable reactions. The problem, however, was behaving less like a machine and more like a living thing, a stubborn, malevolent creature that resisted every attempt to cage it. The team was mentally and emotionally drained, their faces pale under the relentless fluorescent lights. Each failed simulation felt like another nail in the coffin of the mission, and in the coffin of their own distinguished careers. The weight of a nation's dream and billions of dollars rested on their slumped shoulders, a burden that was becoming increasingly unbearable with every passing, silent minute. Lily's journey from her crayon-covered bedroom to the hallowed, sterile halls of NASA was not one of cunning or strategy, but of pure, unshakable conviction. She saw the worry on the news anchor's face, heard the hushed, grim tones of the reporters discussing the indefinite delay. To her, it wasn't an abstract technical problem. It was a friend in trouble. Stardust was sad, and she knew why. With the solemn purpose of a seasoned doctor attending to a patient, she told her mother she had to go. Her mother, weary from a double shift and accustomed to her daughter's whimsical pronouncements, was about to dismiss the idea. But then she saw the look in Lily's eyes. It was not the fleeting fantasy of a child. It was a deep, quiet certainty that transcended logic. In a moment of intuition she would never be able to fully explain, she found herself putting away her apron, grabbing her car keys, and driving her 8-year-old daughter toward the gates of the Kennedy Space Center. They were, of course, stopped at the main gate by a security guard who was both amused and bewildered by the small girl clutching a drawing and insisting she had an appointment with the Artemis VII. It was a scene so absurd that it should have ended there, with a gentle refusal and a drive home. But fate, or perhaps simple human curiosity, intervened. A junior engineer, on his way out after a grueling 16-hour shift, overheard the girl's earnest plea. "She's shaking," Lily said, her voice barely a whisper. "You have to listen to her. Stardust is scared of the noise." The engineer, expecting a child's fantasy about aliens or monsters, found himself strangely moved by the girl's empathy for the machine. He saw not delusion, but a profound, innocent connection. On a whim born of exhaustion and a desperate need for a break from the suffocating tension inside, he decided to escort the girl and her mother to the public relations office, if only to delay his return to the grim reality of the control room. The encounter happened in a bland, impersonal break room, a place of beige walls and the lingering smell of microwaved popcorn. Dr. Elias Vance had escaped the control room for a moment of respite, his head throbbing with the pressure of 1,000 failed calculations. He was stirring a cup of black coffee when the junior engineer hesitantly approached him, followed by a small girl with wide, serious eyes, and a woman who looked apologetic for their very existence. "Sir?" the young engineer began. "This is Lily. She says she can help with the rocket." Vance looked down at the child, then at the colorful drawing she held out with trembling hands. For a fleeting second, the sheer, unadulterated innocence of the moment almost broke through his cynical armor. But the exhaustion and the weight of his responsibility were too immense. A weary, condescending smile touched his lips, and a quiet, humorless chuckle escaped him. It was not a cruel sound, but one of profound, soul-crushing fatigue. "That's very sweet, kid," he said, his voice gentle but dismissive. "A very nice drawing, but we've got some of the best minds in the world working on this. We'll figure it out." A few of his colleagues, who had also sought refuge in the break room, shared his sentiment, their own quiet, tired laughter echoing his own. They saw a child with a charming fantasy, a momentary, absurd distraction from their impossible task. They glanced at the drawing, seeing nothing more than the charmingly chaotic scribbles of a second grader. A big red rocket with yellow flames, surrounded by swirls of blue and purple. They saw what they expected to see. They did not see the blueprint. Lily did not cry. She did not throw a tantrum or shrink away from their dismissive smiles. She simply stood her ground, her small form radiating a quiet dignity that was far more powerful than any outburst. Her gaze remained fixed on Dr. Vance, her eyes holding his with an unnerving intensity. "She doesn't like the straight lines," Lily stated. "Not as a suggestion, but as a fact. You're making her march, but she wants to dance. The fire is supposed to swirl like water going down the drain. It has to spiral so it doesn't step on its own feet." Her words hung in the sterile air of the break room, a piece of childish poetry in a world of rigid prose. The engineers exchanged puzzled glances, the tired amusement beginning to fade into confusion. To them, her words were nonsense, a metaphor without meaning. But as Vance looked at the drawing again, trying to see it through the condescending filter of his own expertise, a flicker of something unsettled him. He was about to offer another patronizing platitude and send her on her way when his assistant, a young, bright-eyed woman named Dr. Eris Thorne, who still possessed a sliver of the wonder that had first drawn her to the stars, stepped forward. She had been observing the interaction silently, and unlike the others, she was not looking at the girl, but at the drawing itself, her head tilted in deep concentration. She had seen beyond the childish colors and imprecise lines. She saw what Lily saw. Not a picture of a rocket, but a map of energy. "Wait," Eris said, her voice cutting through the awkward silence. She knelt down to Lily's level, her eyes scanning the crayon schematic with the focus of a cryptographer studying an ancient code. "Dr. Vance, look at this. It's not just scribbles." She pointed to the base of the rocket in the drawing, where Lily had drawn the engine's exhaust. Instead of the uniform, symmetrical cones the engineers had been modeling for months, Lily had drawn a series of overlapping, swirling vortices, a chaotic yet strangely harmonious pattern. The flames were not depicted as a single, powerful jet, but as a braid of smaller interwoven spirals. From a distance, it was a child's representation of fire, but up close, Eris recognized the unmistakable, self-repeating elegance of a fractal pattern. It was an organic, asymmetrical design, the kind of solution that nature produces through evolution, not the kind that an engineer would create with a slide rule and a computer. It was beautiful, but more importantly, it was radical. It defied the core tenets of their engineering philosophy, which prized symmetry and balance above all else. The central mystery of this small girl with the crayon drawing was beginning to unravel. She was not a fantasist. She was a visionary. She was not offering a picture. She was offering a paradigm shift. Her drawing was not a work of art. It was a work of genius, hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone with eyes open enough to truly see it. A profound electric silence descended upon the small group in the break room. Dr. Vance stared at the drawing, truly looking at it for the first time. The condescension in his eyes was replaced by a dawning, incredulous awe. He saw it now. The intricate, asymmetrical, baffling pattern within the engine nozzle that Lily had drawn. It was a design so counterintuitive, so contrary to every principle of modern rocketry, that no computer simulation would have ever conceived of it. Their programs were designed to seek order and eliminate chaos. Lily's design embraced it. It didn't fight the vibration, it gave it a new dance to perform, channeling the chaotic energy into a stable, spiraling thrust. "Run a simulation," Vance said, his voice a hoarse whisper directed at Eris. "Model the injector flow based on this exact pattern. Every swirl, every overlap. Don't simplify it. Replicate the chaos." Eris nodded, her fingers tracing the waxy lines on the paper as if committing them to memory. She took the drawing, treating it with the reverence of a holy relic, and hurried back toward the control room, the other engineers following in her wake like iron filings drawn to a magnet. The dynamic had shifted with the force of a tectonic plate. The weary, cynical men of science were now the eager students, and the small girl in the faded t-shirt had become their unlikely teacher. Vance was left alone with Lily, a man stripped bare of his certainty. His world upended by a child's drawing. He knelt down, his knees cracking in protest, until he was eye level with her. The immense power and authority he usually commanded had evaporated, replaced by a raw, humbling vulnerability. "Can you," he began, his voice catching in his throat, "can you explain it to us?" "Why this way?" Lily looked at the powerful man kneeling before her, and saw not a famous engineer, but just a grown-up who was lost. She pointed to a small potted plant on the windowsill, its leaves curling towards the light. "The branches don't all grow straight," she said, her voice simple and clear. "They reach for the sun, and they don't get in each other's way. Your rocket's fire is all trying to go out the same door at once. It's a traffic jam. They get angry and start to shake. My way, they all get their own little curving road. They swirl together, like a big family holding hands, so they are stronger and don't get scared." Her explanation was a masterpiece of childlike metaphor. Yet to Vance, it was the most profound piece of engineering theory he had ever heard. She had taken an incomprehensibly complex problem of fluid dynamics and harmonic resonance, and distilled it down to a simple, universal truth of nature. The universe did not favor straight lines. It favored spirals, curves, and elegant, efficient chaos. From the shape of a seashell to the arms of a galaxy, the swirling pattern was everywhere. He had spent his entire career trying to impose rigid order on the universe, to force it into the neat, predictable boxes of his equations. Lily, in her innocence, had simply listened to the universe and drawn what it told her. At that moment, the first results of the new simulation flashed onto the main screen in the control room. The frantic, jagged red lines that signified catastrophic resonance had vanished. In their place was a single, smooth, impossibly stable green line, soaring upwards in a perfect, powerful arc. A collective gasp went through the room, a sound of pure, unadulterated disbelief and wonder. The ghost in the machine was gone. The hours that followed were a whirlwind of focused, electrifying energy. The control room, once a tomb of despair, was now a buzzing hive of renewed purpose. The team of engineers, who hours before had been defeated and demoralized, were now galvanized by a shared sense of awe and a ticking clock. They had a solution, but implementing it was a monumental task. The launch window was now less than a day away. Fabricating a new injector plate with such a complex asymmetrical design was impossible in that time frame. But Vance, his mind now open to the unconventional, devised a daring plan. They would use the existing injector plate but install a series of precisely machined magnetic conduits on its surface. These conduits, when energized, would manipulate the flow of the ionized fuel, forcing it into the spiraling pattern Lily had drawn. It was a risky, unproven modification. A piece of high-tech improvisation that would have been unthinkable just a day ago. But today, the impossible felt strangely within reach. At the center of this maelstrom of activity sat Lily. She was in a large, worn leather chair that had been rolled into the heart of the control room. A small, still point in a turning world. She was no longer just a guest. She was the mission's chief consultant. Engineers with decades of experience would approach her with their laptops, showing her complex telemetry displays and asking for her input. "Is this swirl right?" they would ask, pointing to a computer-generated model of the fuel flow. Lily would squint, tilt her head, and offer a simple correction. "A little more curly on this side," she'd say, her small finger tapping the screen, guiding their billion-dollar effort with the simple wisdom of a child's eye. The sheer juxtaposition was almost comical. A little girl in scuffed sneakers, sipping on a juice box provided by a grateful technician, while directing the most advanced rocket science on the planet. The gentle, situational humor of her presence was a balm to their frayed nerves. In the middle of a heated discussion about magnetic field calibration, Lily's quiet voice piped up. "Does Stardust have a window? I hope she can see the stars when she gets there." The question, so pure and innocent, momentarily stopped the frantic work. The engineers looked at each other, and for the first time in days, they smiled. They had been so consumed by the mechanics, the numbers, and the fear of failure that they had forgotten the purpose of it all. The wonder, the exploration, the simple, profound dream of reaching for the stars. Lily, with her unwavering love for the inanimate tower of metal she called Stardust, had not only given them the key to saving the mission but was also reminding them of the heart that lay beneath the science. As the countdown clock ticked relentlessly lower, the final modifications were completed. The team gathered around the main console for the last, crucial simulation. This test would mimic the entire launch sequence, from ignition to orbital insertion, with the new magnetic flow system activated. The fate of the Artemis VII, and the careers of everyone in the room, rested on this final digital dress rehearsal. A tense silence fell over the control room, the only sound the quiet, rhythmic hum of the servers. Dr. Vance looked over at Lily, who was watching the main screen with rapt attention. Her small hands clasped together in her lap. He gave the final command, his voice steady despite the tremor he felt in his soul. "Initiate final launch simulation." The numbers and graphics on the giant screen began to move, simulating the ignition of the massive engines. On one side of the screen, a graph displayed the vibrational resonance levels. The entire room held its breath, their eyes fixed on the green line that represented the structural integrity of the engine. The thrust level on the simulation climbed past 50%, then 70, then 90. It reached the critical 93% threshold, where every previous simulation had shown a catastrophic failure. The green line, which should have been spiking wildly into the red zone, remained perfectly flat. It did not waver, it did not even tremble. 100% thrust. The simulation showed a perfect, flawless ascent. A wave of relieved, joyous cheers erupted through the control room. Engineers hugged each other, some with tears of relief streaming down their faces. They had done it. They had faced the impossible, and, with the help of a little girl, they had won. But for Dr. Vance, the emotional climax of the moment was not on the screen. It was in the quiet, profound exchange he shared with Lily. He turned to her, his own eyes misty, and saw that she was not looking at the triumphant data on the screen. She was looking at the animated image of the rocket soaring through the digital sky. A single, perfect tear traced a path down her cheek. A tear not of relief, but of pure joy. "She's happy now," Lily whispered. "She's finally dancing." In that instant, Vance felt the heavy, cynical armor he had built around his heart for the past 8 years crack and fall away. He saw in her not just a prodigy, but the reflection of the young boy he had once been. The boy who had looked up at the moon and dreamed of touching it, not for fame or for science, but for the sheer, unadulterated wonder of it all. He knelt down beside her chair, the cheers of his colleagues fading into the background. "Thank you, Lily," he said, his voice thick with an emotion he had long thought himself incapable of feeling. "You didn't just save our rocket. You saved us." The launch of the Artemis VII was a spectacle of sublime power and grace. As the final seconds of the countdown ticked away, a hush fell over the special viewing area where Lily and her mother stood, surrounded by the humbled and grateful engineering team. When the engines ignited, it was not with a roar, but with a symphony. The sound that rolled across the landscape was deep and powerful, yet clean and stable, completely free of the destructive tremor that had haunted them for weeks. The great rocket, christened Stardust in Lily's honor, lifted from the launch pad with an impossible gentleness, a graceful behemoth climbing on a pillar of perfectly spiraling fire. Lily watched, her face upturned, her eyes reflecting the brilliant, man-made star as it ascended into the deep blue of the Florida sky. She did not see the complex interplay of physics and engineering. She saw her friend, finally free, dancing its way to the heavens. Dr. Vance stood beside her, his gaze shifting between the receding rocket and the small girl at his side. He had found his redemption not in a successful launch, but in the rediscovery of his own sense of wonder, a gift given to him by this extraordinary child. He had been reminded that the greatest breakthroughs often come not from superior knowledge, but from a different perspective, from a mind unburdened by the assumptions of what is and is not possible. In the wake of the successful launch, the world clamored for the story of the genius who had saved the Artemis mission. But Dr. Vance, with a fierce protectiveness that surprised even himself, shielded Lily from the glare of the media. He knew that the world would try to dissect and analyze her, to turn her gift into a spectacle. He would not allow her magic to be spoiled by the cynicism of fame. Instead, NASA quietly established the Stardust Foundation, a multi-million-dollar scholarship program dedicated to fostering and supporting young, unconventional thinkers who saw the world in patterns and rhythms, not just in numbers and equations. It was a silent, enduring tribute to the little girl who had reminded them that genius has no minimum age requirement. The world would never know the full story, but the legacy of that day would ripple through generations of future scientists and dreamers. A quiet revolution sparked by a child's compassionate insight. The new paradigm of asymmetrical, chaos-embracing engineering, born from a crayon drawing, would go on to unlock new frontiers in propulsion and energy, fundamentally changing humanity's relationship with technology. Lily returned to her small house, to her bedroom universe of paper and wax. The world outside remained largely unchanged, her mother still coming home with tired hands, the fence still more rust than paint. But something inside Lily was different. She had seen her friend off on the grandest adventure of all, and she had learned that her voice, no matter how small, had the power to be heard across the cosmos. The final scene of this improbable chapter in human history was not in a sterile control room or on a triumphant launch pad, but in the quiet, sunlit space of a child's imagination. There, on a fresh piece of paper, Lily began to draw again. This time, it was not a rocket bound for the moon, but a new, more elegant ship, with graceful, sweeping wings and an engine that swirled with the power of a captured galaxy. Its destination was clear, written in a child's careful, blocky letters at the top of the page: Mars. The journey of Stardust was over, but Lily's was just beginning. The tale of the little girl and the rocket became a quiet legend within the walls of NASA. a reminder that the most complex problems sometimes yield to the simplest truths. It served as a powerful lesson that true innovation requires not just intelligence, but humility, not just expertise, but the willingness to listen to the quietest, most unassuming voices. It is a story about the profound, often overlooked connection between the logical and the intuitive, the scientific and the poetic. It reminds us that within every child's crayon drawing, there may lie a blueprint for the future, a solution to a problem we have not yet learned how to solve. It is a testament to the idea that sometimes, to reach the stars, we must first have the courage to kneel down and see the universe through the eyes of a child. To remember that the grandest machines, like the people who build them, sometimes just need to learn how to dance.